but sex work needs to be viewed as work. And once you do that, we have workers' comp.
Someone who's thinking of getting into sex work, they are putting themselves at certain risks that, you're not usually going to put yourself at any other job, especially because of the stigma, and especially because of the legal situation of sex work around the world. So, yeah, I don't know, what would you tell these people about that?
I would tell them to do as I say and not as I did, because there are plenty of ways that you can mitigate the risks, not be where I was, which is I accepted a job after only meeting a client one time, and I accepted a long distance out call and did not vet this client with other providers. I did not seek any references from them. And you can do everything right. You can tell somebody where you're going to be. You can set up a safe word. You can think you'll know how a scene is going to go, and you can still get raped and need your rapist to drive you to the train station and then pay you because he had agreed to pay you for your time. And then this is an unusual situation. This isn't something, it's not similar to like a date rape or an assault where somebody jumps out of the bushes at you. I remember riding this train, this 3-hour train ride back to New York City where I was, and pulling the stigma out of the air. Suddenly everything that I had said about, no, I'm an independent person who is, just exercising my right as a consenting adult, and this is the way that I make my money, to all of a sudden you soak in, no, what happened to me was because I'm a sex worker and I fucked up at some point, if I can say that, and I messed up at some point, and that is why this has happened. Or you even have the thought of, well, I guess I'm a full service sex worker now, but I didn't make that decision. And that's a really tricky thing to navigate, because at the end of the day, you still take the money. It was just all being said. And suffice it to say, I did not report what happened. I just really fell apart for a few weeks, and, luckily after a long time was able to pull myself out of it. But I would say, do not do what I do. And there are ways to mitigate and make sure things like that do not happen. There are sites that exist. FOSTA-SESTA has made it very, very difficult for these things to exist. And I hope that could be a transition for us to talk about FOSTA-SESTA, because there should be safeguards in place that protect human beings. And everyone can agree with that sentiment. But as soon as you say there should be ways to keep sex workers from falling prey to rapists by being able to give references to one another, and that falls under, no, that site should not exist, because it potentially has an ancillary connection to a website that has had a tiny amount of posts connected to, child trafficking, which is also something that nobody likes. But that is the sneaky, insidious part of FOSTA-SESTA, because once you put something under the banner of, well, y'all hate pedophiles, don't you? Because everyone hates pedophiles. Nobody wants children to be trafficked for sex. This is a horrible thing. But you can sneak so much underneath that bill. And that is what happened. And it prevents, businesswomen and businessmen and business people. It prevents individuals who are just trying to make a living and survive from being as safe as they possibly can. The only reason that what happened to me is because the dungeon no longer made money, and I needed to outsource. Like it was safe in the dungeon because we had a security guy. We had, we had their driver's license. So if anything happens, we're going to call the police. And you don't have that when you are meeting strangers from Twitter or fielding calls off of Backpage. And I'm not saying that Backpage was a wonderful thing. It's clearly not, but it served a purpose. And the problem is everything that got swept up into that witch hunt.
Why did you not report what happened?
I felt a tremendous amount of guilt and shame. It was mostly in terms of I felt like I had been so suckered. I felt like I had been so stupid. And I felt taken advantage of. And it really, I found it laughable. And it's very, very interesting to hear 8 years later, be able to tell you very matter-of-factly what happened. And it was also a bit of a tricky situation where it was not agreed upon that there would be any sex during this session. It was absolutely presented as I am renting out a dungeon for a few hours and, we're going to play together and I'll top you and you'll top me and we're both switches and it'll be fun. It's very easy to say that. And then you're tied up and there's a box cutter. And the guy's like, guess what? This is what we're going to do now. And it's part of the fantasy. And there's a very strange realization where I blanked out. I suddenly did not know my own safe word. I mostly did not report because it was such a flurry of information. And there was a nagging, very nasty little voice in the back of my head that said, if you were really scared, you would have remembered your safe word. Or like if it was really something you didn't want, you would have found a way to get out of it. There must be some reason that it happened. And that's a really difficult thing to navigate. And you also understand that if you go in, there is a upstanding 54-year-old white guy who's like, I don't know what this woman's talking about. And it's very, very tricky to go, I don't know who he knows. I don't know what strings he can pull. It's my word against his. And if they even take me seriously, I was technically committing a crime. And that's
the worst part of everything.
And that's a huge part of, I think, why crimes get underreported. And it breaks my heart to be part of that statistic. So again, do what I say, not what I do.
What do you think needed to be different? Maybe not inside of you, because we already, you've shared with us the story. And I think in every single situation, people deal with these things,
Yeah.
But still, none of us should at some point just make it right, something bad happened. It shouldn't be my fault. But then the question is what do you think was needed from the world around? What should have been different around you that would have changed that?
I don't think that it's a panacea and it will fix everything, but legalizing sex work and being able to provide the basic benefits that, anybody who gets 25 hours a week at a job is able to, get healthcare, and maybe there's a union, or there's just, if you are legitimized as a business person and you are legitimized and seen as a human. And I think there is a huge issue with America with cementing your occupation with your identity, and also determining your legitimacy and your productivity by what it is that you do and how you contribute to society. And I think that's a really nasty way of looking at it sometimes, because that negates the idea of, well, don't artists bring joy? And it doesn't matter that a preschool teacher may make $38,000 a year. They should make more than that. But that, is it better to change the life of one kindergarten class? Do you know what I mean? So if it were just a job that you could have that has its own esteem to it, Joey's a plumber and Kristen is a senator and Rachel is a tug job artist. If baristas can be called latte artists, then I think that tug job artist should be a job description because there is a lot of nuance that goes into those things. And it's not just a rough and ready, one size fits all approach. And I say it to make it funny because I have to, and that's just my coping mechanism. But sex work needs to be viewed as work. And once you do that, we have workers' comp. If I went to work at an office and stepped into the building and slipped on the floor and cracked my head open, I'm entitled to money for protection because my job didn't protect me. You'd be able to do that. I would have been able to do that. I could have walked out of that room, gone to the head of that building and said, sound the alarms. You got a real head case back there. Please call the cops because and you can't do that. And I don't understand why we're lagging behind everything.
Yeah, it doesn't
It
make
would
sense.
it would make everyone so happy. Just look at weed. You can tax it. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so that'd be my answer. Just make it okay.
I think that's part of, like, first of all, thank you for sharing the story with us, because I think those are difficult things to talk about. Even if you've talked about them over and over again, I don't think it ever gets just, normal to talk about it. And that's part of why we're here, right? Because things need to change. And I think because we've heard stories like your story is not the only one. As we were, like getting informed about these things, there are many stories like that. And in fact, like there are even stats, as you mentioned, like usually when that happens within the world of sex work, there is nobody to go to and report what's going on. And on top of that, like I think it's also very difficult how even, let's not talk about the government or about legal institutions. Let's talk about, society. And then you should be able to have some support in your friends, your family, whatever. But then, as there is still so much stigma around sex work, even that becomes a thing where probably you don't even tell your family that you're doing it. And then that's a whole deal.
Both my parents knew because I didn't have the energy to keep it a secret from them. My mother was pretty all right with it when I told her how much money I was making. But then, you visit her 9 months later and she has 2 glasses of wine and then she's just chain smoking outside. Like, what did I do wrong as a mother that this is your life? I picked this. How dare you? So yeah, there's a weird, there's an unsettling stigma, and it's so frustrating because it's so hypocritical. And I think I like what you said about support systems. And I think it is a good way to ping back to FOSTA-SESTA, because the support systems end up happening at a grassroots level, and it's a very local level often. But the internet, by virtue of the fact that it's connected people, you have to. And I don't want to say it as if it's black and white, because yeah, there are sites where you can go, do not take XYZ client. They have a story like mine, but it runs the gamut. You can find out, oh yeah, this client, honestly, he'll just send you pictures of his dick all night and never book with you. He'll waste your time for 4 hours. That's important to know too. That's helpful. If we're able to have Angie's List and leave reviews on our plumbers, and there could be 700 Amazon reviews for a bullet journal, we should be able to know what we're getting into, because when there is, have you seen Sin City? I just rewatched it, and it's going to sound like it's coming out of left field, but Old Town is the red light district of Sin City. The cops don't come there.
Yeah.
And the whores of Old Town are their own law.
Yep.
That is how it worked before FOSTA-SESTA, is that we would look out for each other and we would be able to give references. And now that is kind of the only, I don't keep tabs on it as much as I used to, naturally, because I am no longer like balls deep in that world. But it used to be, if you're looking to book with me, I need a picture of your ID. I need some kind of collateral. I need to figure out who you are. Or I would prefer to hear from a provider who's seen you before. When times get tough, and I'm sure COVID exacerbated this, or when business gets tight, that is when those protections get lax. And that is when you realize you can't vet everyone. Or I remember when FOSTA-SESTA happened, the business ground to a screeching halt, and there was a mass exodus to Twitter. And I do not do social media very well. So I immediately was like, I'm more annoyed that I have to create posts on social media than I am about potentially like giving a guy an enema. That's less annoying than just the maintenance of Twitter. And I lost my train of thought there for a second.
You were talking about.
Oh, and business stopped. And suddenly that was about the time where I had to jump ship for good, because I was working full-time corporate. Not everyone I knew was so lucky. They didn't have that backup that they could run to. A lot of providers started slashing their rates. A lot of providers started avoiding vetting or whatever they could to just, because once Backpage went down, the hundreds and thousands of horny men didn't just disappear. They were panicking just as much as we were. And
okay,
it was the Wild West. Yeah. That was the final nail in the coffin for me to leave. It was about time for me, but FOSTA-SESTA really just, shot the horse. Broke the horse's leg and then shot the, there we go.